November was quite a good reading month for me, and now I just want to make sure that this sort of momentum carries on into December because I really want to have a good end to the year. Hi everyone, my name is Chloe, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for being here today for day number 3 of BOOKMAS. So far you have seen my TBR, you've seen a vlog. Now we're going to do a little bit of wrap up. We need to finish off November. We've got to wrap up, we've got a haul coming your way tomorrow because basically this is BOOKMAS. I am going to be doing a video every day up until the 25th of the month, up until Christmas Day. So you've got 25 consecutive videos from me. So like I said, we need to wrap up November, and then we can move on to all that festive goodness because I've got some Christmassy reads and Christmassy content planned for the rest of the month. So let's put November to rest, shall we, and talk about all the books that I read during the month. Like I said, had a pretty good reading month. I will just give you a few statistics before I go into specifics. As per usual, I'm going to put a little bit of a caveat on this and say that I am filming this on the 28th of November. Now, I am in the middle of one last book that I am planning to finish probably tomorrow, maybe Tuesday at the absolute latest. I counted that in the statistics because I know that I will definitely finish that. I am not counting it as the star rating, but I'm counting it for everything else like page numbers and things. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to film an extra clip that I will add in later on to talk about my final thoughts and feelings on that book. I may potentially be able to squeeze one more book in, but I'm doing this on the hopes that I just get that one finished and that's all I need to do because it's the last book on my TBR from TBR MASH. So if I don't finish that one, I've got to add something extra for December, and that will entirely mess up the TBR that I've already uploaded. So without further ado, let's just talk through some stats. I read a total of 11 books this month, which is just above the average that I've been reading per month. I've actually read 110 books this year now, which means I'm reading on average 10 books a month, which is fantastic. So 11 puts me just above that. For pages, I have read 4,749 pages, which is the second highest I have read so far this year, and it puts me at 158 pages per day, which is right on track with the other sort of highest. The other highest was 158.45. This is 158.3. So I've had a really good reading month in terms of pages, and that means that my yearly page per day is 130.78, so 131. Also means that no matter what I read during December, I have definitely done my 100 pages per day goal for the year, because right now, even if I read nothing in December, I'd be at 120 pages per day, which I'm very, very happy about, because that was one of my key things for this year, was that I knew that I would be sort of going back into the world a little bit more with things opening up, and I wanted to make sure that I was still prioritising reading, which I clearly have. I mean, this channel has definitely helped, but I'm very, very happy with that. So yes, statistics are on my side at the minute, which is fantastic. I will have a whole video with statistics coming in January, but let's go back to November. I am definitely rambling at the minute. For the format, I have listened to one completely by audiobook. I have read 4 physical books, and then the other 6 were a mixture. Now usually that is a mixture of audio and physical, but for 2 of these I actually did a mixture of ebook and physical book, because for some reason I found that with this particular book series I read it a lot quicker on ebook, so I was sort of reading it on ebook whenever I could, and then every so often when I wanted to like really spend time with the story, I would pick up the physical. Very different from how I normally read things, so I'm actually quite interested in how that worked just for this particular series. For age range, I read 1 middle grade, 6 young adult, and then 4 adult. So actually this is one of the months where I have sort of gone back to YA. I've read some stuff that has been on my TBR for a while and I've kind of put off, so I think that's what it is, that it's ones that I've had for longer, and I was definitely buying more YA previously, but I have actually loved a lot of the YA that I've read this month, so I'm quite happy with that, and still definitely getting my adult reads in there as well. It's still a nice balance, it's just skewed more towards YA, whereas in recent months it's been the opposite way around. And then for star ratings, on the 10 books that I've rated so far, I have had 6 4-star reads and 4 5-star reads, which means that I have had nothing under a 4-star, and my average is 4.4 stars, which is a very good average. It's the 3rd highest it's been all year. So very good. I've been loving what I've been reading. Like I said, it's been a really good reading month, not necessarily just for numbers, but because I've just been really enjoying what I've been reading. So I think that's enough numbers. Let's actually just talk about what books I did read. And we started the month off with a reread, and that was Aurora Rising by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. So this one tells the story of a main character who is called Tyler, I believe. I've literally just read this and I forgot his name. Tyler. Tyler is sort of the star pupil in the space academy that he's currently participating in. He is due to graduate soon, and the night before his graduation he ends up going on a solo mission where he comes across a ship that is long thought to be lost, and he finds a girl on there in sort of like a cryo sleep status, and he decides to go and rescue her. But that means that he misses his graduation, so he doesn't get to have the top pick of his crew like he thought he was going to have, and he's left with kind of the dregs that nobody really wants on their team. And then it is just kind of about everything unravelling from there. So there's more to this girl than what was originally expected, and the crew kind of has to band together on this adventure. I've said before, whenever I've talked about this, it very much reminds me of the TV show Firefly, which is fantastic because that is one of my favourite series. I have read this one previously. Like I said, it's a reread. I read it when it first came out, which was, I think, in 2019 maybe. I'll double check. Yeah, 2019. I gave it a 4 stars then. It's still a 4 star now. I did very much enjoy it. It's not quite a 5 star. I'm not a massive sci-fi reader, so I don't know if that's part of it, but I enjoyed it for what it was. It was a very fun read. It was a very fun book. I like the humour of a lot of the characters in here, and like I said, it's just a really fun book to read. And basically I reread this just because I had forgotten a little bit of the story, and I felt like I needed a refresher before I moved on to the sequel, which you are going to see later on in this video. So I'm glad that I did reread this, and yeah, just reminded me that actually I really enjoyed this series. It's a sci-fi series that I do enjoy. Next up we have got Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. So this is the 4th book in the Realm of the Elderling series, but it is the 1st book in a series which is called The Live Ship Traders. So this is about these ships where basically they are passed down from generation to generation within families, and when 3 generations of one family have died on the ships, these ships do something which is called to quicken, which basically means they come to life. The ships have sentience, they are able to speak, they have quite strong relationships with the families that are on the ships, and basically it's about one particular ship that quickens towards the start of the novel, and about sort of the family drama that is happening around the sort of inheritance of this ship. And I did enjoy this. I will say this is my lowest rated Robin Hobb book to date. This got 4 stars. I gave all the Varsia trilogy 5 stars. My thing with this is that, so this is very different from the Varsia trilogy. For one thing, Varsia is all told from one person's perspective. It is Fitz's point of view. It is in first person, Fitz telling you the story. This is very different. This is a third person multi-POV type story. It's a completely different area from the world, so the magic system is very different in this. Like, the magic from the other series exists, but it's not really sort of what they're focused on at all. So it just took me a while to get used to where I was in the world, really. And some of the characters I don't like in this, but I do think you're not supposed to like them. But it took me a while to sort of get into the heads of the newer characters, and even the ones that I did like, it just took me a while to kind of figure out where I was at with them. Once I did, I really enjoyed it. I just feel like it was a lot of setup in this book, and I think the next 2 in the series are going to be fantastic. I have very, very high hopes, specifically for the next one, because that is a book that I've heard everyone rave about as kind of like the best Robin Hobb book. So Mad Ship will be being read soon, and I hope I love this. This one got a very, very high 4 star. I think if you use a core pile system, it was literally 1 point away from being a 5 star. It could be a 5 star on reread because I'll know the characters more. But right now it's sitting at a 4. But obviously a 4 star is still a very high rating. It's just my lowest Hobb book so far, if that makes sense. Back to the Aurora cycle now. We have Aurora Burning. I actually think I preferred this one to the first one. So this is, I'm not going to give you a synopsis because obviously it follows on from the first book, and I've already done the synopsis of that. And if I tell you anything about this one, it will be massive spoilers. But this one, I think because the story had already been set up in the first one, I did really, really enjoy this. I grown to love some of the characters, and some of the characters that I really enjoyed got sort of more spotlight in this one, I feel. Also, the ending of this one was fantastic in a way that I need to finish the series ASAP, because it left you at such a cliffhanger. And I'm really glad actually that I did not read this straight away, because I don't think I could have coped with the year wait between the books. But yeah, generally this series, as I said before, very fun, very fast paced, and I cannot wait to finish off with Aurora's End, which I do now own and I will be reading as soon as physically possible. We then move on to my first 5-star read of the month, and that is Extraordinary by V. Schwab. Of course, V. Schwab was going to get a 5-star from me, and this one is a graphic novel that is set in between the two books in the Villain series, so Vicious and Vengeful. So that series, for anyone who doesn't know, is about characters with extraordinary abilities. It does have quite like sort of X-Men vibes to it. So basically in this world, extraordinaries are created by having near-death experiences. When you have a near-death experience, you can potentially develop superpowers afterwards. And for the main character in this, that ends up manifesting as when she sees someone's reflection, she can see visions of how they are going to die. But when she sees her own reflection, all she can see is this one particular man in the mirror who ends up being one of the main characters from the Villain series. So she's trying to figure out what is going to happen, how her story is going to interact with his, and she kind of sets about trying to stop this fate from happening and stopping him from killing her. And I'm not going to tell you too much more than that because I don't want to spoil anything from Vicious with it sort of coming in between. But I very, very much enjoyed this because I've read both of those. It was nice to have this as like a gap in the middle. I also really like the art style of this because I think it fit the story really well. It is very much like comic book style, which, like I said, because it has X-Men vibes, I think that just works really well for this particular series. And I just really, really loved this. So I'm very glad to have read it. I do like those sort of like extra little stories in the middle of a series. I think it does just flesh things out a little bit more, and it makes me feel more immersed in the world when I have like just that little bit of extra knowledge to back up the rest of the story. On to more V. Schwab and also more of rereading a book so I can carry on with the series. The next one is This Savage Song by V. Schwab. So this one is set in a world where when there is some sort of like violent crime or violent action, a monster appears from the carnage. So there are different types of monster depending on what the violence is, and the city where all these monsters are is kind of split in half as well. And you have one side that's run by somebody who wants to create sort of more order with like a police force and things like that, and you have another side where it's more sort of gangster rule, and it's about the two children of both of these families and kind of how their lives interact within that sort of larger structure. I'm not the best at giving a synopsis of this book, and I don't understand why because I've now read the entire series. I will obviously get to the sequel in a minute, but I really adore this series. I read this book years ago, I can't even remember when now, and for some reason never picked up the sequel, so to the point where I really, really needed to reread this to carry on with it. So I reread this. I gave it 5 stars. It was, I think, 4 stars actually the first time I read it, so it actually bumped itself up. I think because I expected the world a little bit more, and also because I've read a lot more of V. Schwab's writing, and her books do tend to start off quite slow, but I was expecting that this time, whereas last time I think it took me a while to get into it. This time, no, I'm fully expecting that, so I'm absolutely fine with it. And yes, I really, really love the characters in this. I particularly love the character of August. I think he's just a really interesting character to read from his perspective because he kind of doesn't really fit in the world where he's living at the minute, but he also wouldn't fit in the other side of the world as well, and it's a lot of conflict going on within him, and I find him a really interesting character to read from. And also there's a lot to do with music in this book as well, and I really love how that plays a part within this story. And yeah, I adored this book. Can you tell? I love V. Schwab, we all know this, so I'm really glad that I was sort of back in this world, and I will, like I said, get to the second one momentarily. But first we need to speak about the middle grade book that I read this month. I don't read a lot of middle grade. We know I don't read a lot of middle grade. I am still searching for the 5-star middle grade. Unfortunately, I did not find it this month, but I got really, really close, and that was in reading The Creakers by Tom Fletcher, which is probably more of a kids book than middle grade, but I'm still going to count it. Basically, this is about the creatures that live underneath the bed. So one day, all the kids wake up and there are no adults left in their town, and it's because they've been taken by the Creakers, who are the creatures that live under the bed. And the main character in this is called Lucy, and she is one of the only kids in town that's actually a little bit worried about where the parents have gone, so she decides to go and try and track them down, and that takes her into the world of the Creakers. speakers. And this book is a little bit creepy, which I quite liked. I love Tom Fletcher's writing style. He really talks to the audience when he's writing, and sort of like he checks on you at the end of each chapter to make sure you're not too scared yet, and gives you warnings of what's going to come, which is really cute. He's got a great sort of sense of humour in here as well. I keep saying this is a type of children's book I would have loved as a kid, so I really enjoyed it. Like I said, it was very close to the 5-star. The only issue I had is that it felt like it ended and then another thing happened, and I just didn't think that bit really needed to be on there. But I have another Tom Fletcher book to read during the month of December. Could that be the 5-star middle grade? We will see. But yeah, I'm really glad that I read this one, because I've had it for years. I think it came out about 3-4 years ago, and my mum bought it me for my birthday and she got me a signed copy, and I just never got around to reading it, so I'm glad that I finally did. I thought I'd pick it up now, with it still being like close towards spooky season. It's still kind of fit in. I'm glad that I did read that one. On to the next 5-star read, actually the next two 5-star reads. The first one being Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. So this one is in the same sort of vibe as House of Cerulean Sea. If any of you guys have read that one, I'm sure quite a few of you have. This one is about a character called Wallace who dies basically at the beginning of the story. That is not a spoiler. He didn't really have the best relationships in his life. He had gotten divorced. He didn't really have that many close friends. He was working as a lawyer, and the people that he worked with didn't really love him that much either. So when he passes away, he ends up sort of seeing his own funeral, and he finds that no one's really that disappointed to see him go. He is then taken to a way station, which is for people that are sort of in between life and death. And it's while he's at that way station that he kind of meets the people who work there and are supposed to be helping him to move on. And he finds a place that he actually can make these close bonds that he's never really been able to have in life. And it's just about him kind of coming to terms with life and death. And it's really beautiful. And there's some lovely relationships in here. And I adored this book so much. This was a 5-star, a very high 5-star. I haven't really thought about which one of these books is my favourite of the month, but to be honest, it's probably this one. I really enjoyed it, and I'm really glad I did, because I loved House in the Cerulean Sea, so I had really high hopes for this, and it did not disappoint, thank God for that. I know I've seen some reviews, because like obviously when you log it on Goodreads, after you finish, it kind of sends you an email, so kind of saying, what will your next read be? And it shows you other ratings that people have given this, and I saw a lot of ratings that were saying it wasn't as good as House in the Cerulean Sea. For me personally, I actually kind of preferred it, but I can understand why some people wouldn't. Something about it particularly connected for me, but I can understand why for some people it wouldn't be quite as good. But that being said, I think if you enjoyed House in the Cerulean Sea, you will still love this one. Whether you love it more, I don't know, but I think you will still enjoy it. We then have my last 5-star of the month, and that is the conclusion of the Monsters of Verity series. It is Dark Duet by V. Schwab. So I'm not going to give you a synopsis of this one, because obviously it follows on from this Savage song, but what I will say is that there was a bit of a jump between the end of this Savage song and this one, and this one actually felt like it got into the action a lot quicker, which is great. I really loved this book, and I know a lot of people, when I was reading this, Becca Fowle in particular, every time I mentioned I was reading this, she's like, are you broken yet? Has it made you cry yet? The broken part comes towards the very end. And I will say that I think because I knew it was quite an upsetting ending to the book, I was kind of expecting it to go one of two ways, and the ending didn't quite get me as much as I think it could have done. Without going into spoilers, possibly because I think the other way that I was thinking it could have gone, I would have been more upset about. But it was still very upsetting. It was a beautiful book, to be honest. The entire series was beautiful. I've already discussed what I love about the series earlier on, and there's nothing really different with this. I adore V. Schwab's writing. There's something about it that I just really love. So, yeah. I'm really happy that I finally finished this series. I can now say it is a full 5-star series, which is fantastic. That's what we all want in life, really, isn't it? To read books that we absolutely love. Next up, we have got Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Nayan. So, I've had this one for many years. It was in a fairy loot box many years ago. I have finally read this book. I gave it 4 stars. I did very much enjoy it, but... well, first let me tell you a little bit of the synopsis before I explain why it wasn't quite a 5-star for me, because it very much ties into what the synopsis is. So in this world, there are sort of 3 castes. There are the demons at the top, who are called Moon Caste. There are humans at the bottom, which is Paper Caste. And in the middle, you have Steel, which is kind of a mixture of the two. And essentially, the demons rule the land, and there is a Demon King. The Demon King each year picks 8 girls who are his paper girls, who are essentially his concubines. They go to the royal palace, and he picks one of them to come and join him in his bedchamber each night. And it's and it can be seen as a great honour to be picked, but also, as you can imagine, it's not necessarily what the girls actually want. The main character in this is kind of unexpectedly picked because she's actually a 9th girl that is picked, which is very unusual because it is always 8. And then when she gets there is sort of all sorts of things going on. So there's forbidden romance type plot in here. There is obviously the talk of consent and how she feels whenever she is chosen by the king. There is also a rebellion within this to sort of overthrow the king. There is a lot going on, and I did really enjoy the storyline, and I think it did some really, really good things. I think it touched on some really important subjects. There is an author's note at the beginning where the author talks about growing up as someone who is mixed race and talks about sexual assault and rape as well. And I found this book to be very, very interesting, and like I said, it had a lot to talk about, a lot of important things to talk about, and it did handle them very well for a YA book. This is my issue. I feel like this should have been an adult book. I feel like the things that it touched on, it had to hold back a little bit just because of the audience that it was aimed at. I didn't need graphic scenes when the sexual assault happened, but the way that it was done was very much fade to black, and then afterwards it was very much sort of skirted over. Like, there was obviously negative feelings towards things that happened, but it was still very much glossed over and then moved on to the next scene. And I just feel like we could have gone into how the character felt a little bit more, and those sort of things would have been discussed a bit more in an adult book, because they wouldn't have had to sort of soften it a little bit for a YA audience. I don't know if this makes sense at all, because like I said, I don't want to read anything that's too brutal and is too triggering for someone, but I just feel like because of the subject matter and because of the age range, it just didn't quite have the sort of reminder of just how brutal this is that it needed to. It felt like you'd have sort of these talks about consent and things like that, and the next second it'd be very much this sort of like just competition between the girls again, and it felt like a regular sort of YA fantasy where it's a little bit fluffy, and it just felt like this particular storyline didn't need that part in there because it sort of undercut the seriousness of it a little bit so that you forgot about it. I think that makes sense. Tell me if it doesn't. I really enjoyed it. I'm sounding like I didn't enjoy it. I did. I just wish that it could have just done that little bit more because the subject matter deserved it. And then last but not least, we have got Olympus, which is a graphic novel which is based on a web series which is originally on Webtoons, and this is a bind-up of the first 25 episodes. This is a Hades and Persephone retelling. I don't need to go too much more into the synopsis of this. I think a lot of people have already heard of it, but the art style is absolutely gorgeous, and I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. I feel like it took me a little bit of time to figure out who all the characters are. Sometimes someone will come on the page and I think it was one person, but it wasn't. It was someone else, and I think once I actually get into this and get into the next one, it'll be even higher. But I really enjoyed it. I'm glad I read it. So that is all the books that I have finished. I am still reading These Violent Delights, so I will add a clip here to talk about that. Jumping in here to say I've officially finished my last book of November. I did just finish the one more. I finished These Violent Delights, which is great because it means that I finished everything that was on my TBR, MASH TBR. I also realised in this wrap up, I've not mentioned at all that I was participating in Royal Readathon Fairies Edition, and this was the last book I had to complete for that. So yes, very happy that I completed all of these sort of TBR goals that I had for this month, and I'm happy to report that this one was a 4-star. I very, very much enjoyed this. I got lost a little bit in the middle. I feel like I was listening to the audiobook as well, and I do think I possibly just lost concentration a little bit, but when I started concentrating on it more and reading alongside it, I did really love it. So I think the 4-star could more be a me issue, but I think possibly it was as well that it just didn't quite captivate me in the middle enough. I mean, it's fairly long, but it is a duology. It is a Romeo and Juliet retelling. So, if you know the story of Romeo and Juliet, it is only about half of the play. It gets towards sort of one particular catalyst moment, which is the end of this book, but it is the middle of the play. So this obviously had to be fleshed out with quite a lot of other stuff as well, and it meant that the actual sort of setup of the relationship between Romeo and Juliet, or Roma and Juliet as it is in this case, just took a little bit of a while to get going. Also, the thing is that it is a slight twist on Romeo and Juliet, whereas the relationship has kind of already happened. They had met previously and had already sort of had that whole sort of star-crossed lovers thing, but something completely different from what is in the play had happened to split them up. And then this is more sort of, it's inspired by what happens in the play, but it is based on the fact that they had already been together. So I always find those stories a little bit harder to get into because I'm supposed to root for this couple when I don't really know too much about them because I've not actually seen them get together. And I think that was part of it as well. Once it actually got towards the end and it got towards them actually sort of rekindling their romance and things like that, I really got into it, and I think I'll really enjoy the second one. I just find that because that relationship was already established, it took me a while to kind of get on board with it. That being said, I really enjoyed this one. I think sometimes when I'm actually more critical of it, it's because I really enjoyed it and I just want that tiny bit more to make it like an all-time favourite type book. So I'm hoping that the second one is absolutely amazing because it's really setting up for that. It ends on a cliffhanger. There is actually some twists in the Romeo and Juliet story, and this definitely has one towards the end, which I like, and I'm intrigued to see where it goes and whether or not it has sort of the tragic ending that you would expect from a Romeo and Juliet retelling, or if there is another twist on it, which I'm kind of hoping there is because, you know, I like these characters. I don't want them both to die. But anyway, back to Chloe from before. And that is everything. Thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff down below. Let me know what you read in November. Did you read some good books? I feel like I had a really good reading month. So yeah, let me know, and let me know how you're feeling about going into December. Have you sort of hit your reading goals? Are you hoping you're going to finish it out strong? So I'll see you guys tomorrow with the next BOOKMAS video. Bye.